After 10 years helping build my husband's family company, he joined his father to throw me out like I was nothing. His mother laughed in my face, calling me useless, while his father smirked and said I was lucky they tolerated me this long. I went back to odd jobs feeling small, embarrassed, and crushed. Then a quiet client reminded me the old shares were still mine. When I saw their value, $47 million, I froze. You were always useless, Harper. Isabella Whitmore said it with a laugh. Not cruel, not angry, just matter of fact. Like she was commenting on the weather. Like 10 years of my life meant nothing. I sat there in that restaurant, rain hammering against the windows, and felt the velvet box dig into my palm. Inside was a necklace I'd spent 3 months saving for. Our initials intertwined. Custom designed by a jeweler in Brooklyn who'd listened to me talk about Lucas for an hour while sketching ideas. 10-year anniversary. I thought he planned something special. Something romantic. I'd been so stupid. The envelope sat between the salt and pepper shakers. 3-month salary. That's what a decade of my life was worth to the Whitmore family. 3 months. James Whitmore cleared his throat again, that sound that always meant the conversation was over. We'll need your key card and laptop by Monday morning. Security will escort you out. Security. Like I was a thief. Like I hadn't built half of what they were celebrating. Lucas still hadn't looked at me. My husband of 10 years, sitting there in the cologne I'd bought him last Christmas, staring at his wine glass like it held answers. His silence was louder than anything his mother had said. I'd been 26 when James hired me. Fresh out of Columbia with an MBA I'd paid for with loans I was still drowning in. Lucas and I were newlyweds then, living in a studio apartment in Brooklyn so small we had to take turns getting dressed in the morning. We ate ramen 3 nights a week. For if money was tight. I remember thinking the Whitmore job was a miracle. Decent salary. Real title. A chance to prove myself. James had called me into his office that first week. I'm giving you 0.3% equity, he'd said, sliding papers across his massive desk. Symbolic stake. Makes you feel invested, part of the team. I'd signed without reading it carefully. Who questions a gift? Who argues with a miracle? I spent the next decade earning that miracle. I rebuilt their supply chain from the ground up. The Whitmore Group had been regional, profitable but small, stuck in outdated systems and old relationships. I changed everything. Negotiated contracts in Singapore with manufacturers who'd never heard of them. Spent 3 weeks in Sydney convincing distribution partners we were worth the risk. Implemented automation systems that cut their operational costs by 37%. 37%. I still remember the number because James had framed the report and hung it in his office. This is what excellence looks like, he told the board. Not Harper's excellence. Just excellence. Like it had manifested from thin air. I missed our 5th anniversary because I was in Seoul finalizing warehouse contracts. Lucas had been understanding. You're building our future, he'd said on the phone, his voice fuzzy across 12 time zones. We'll celebrate when you get back. We never did. There was always another deal, another crisis, another late night that bled into early morning. Marcus, Lucas's younger brother, the golden child, spent those same years finding himself. Prague galleries. Bali yoga retreats. A brief stint at an art school in Florence that James paid for without blinking. He needs time to discover his passion, Isabella would say at family dinners, her voice warm with indulgence. When Marcus finally joined the company 2 years ago, it was with a director title and a corner office. No rebuilding supply chains. No missed anniversaries. Just a nameplate and a sense of entitlement. I'd worked until 3 in the morning in windowless offices while Marcus posted Instagram photos from Santorini. I'd negotiated billion-dollar deals while he posted Instagram photos from Santorini. I'd built their empire while he found himself. And now he was chief operations officer. This isn't about performance, James said, his voice cold and measured. Clinical. Like he was discussing quarterly projections, not dismantling my entire life. It's about vision. About leadership. About family. Family. The word I'd been chasing for 10 years. The word that had kept me working those late nights, missing those anniversaries, sacrificing everything because I thought if I just worked hard enough, proved myself thoroughly enough, I'd finally belong. Isabella leaned forward, her designer perfume reaching me across the table. You married into the family, Harper. There's a difference. You were always an employee. A very dedicated employee certainly, but an employee nonetheless. I looked at Lucas then. Really looked at him. Waiting for him to say something. Anything. Waiting for him to defend me, defend us, defend the 10 years we'd built together. His jaw was tight. His knuckles white around his wine glass. But he said nothing. The Melbourne deal, I managed, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. That deal alone was worth $2 billion. I just closed it last month. Company accomplishment, James said dismissively. Team effort. Team effort. I'd spent 6 months on that deal. 6 months of 18-hour days, video calls at midnight, presentations refined until they were perfect. I'd negotiated every term personally. But it was a team effort. How long? I asked Lucas directly. How long have you known? He finally looked at me then. His eyes were red-rimmed. Guilty. 6 months. 6 months. I was in Seoul. While I was pulling all-nighters to make them proud. While I was shopping for an anniversary gift I couldn't afford, he'd been sitting in meetings planning my execution. The severance is generous, one of their lawyers interjected. I hadn't even noticed him sitting at the far end of the table. 3 months' salary, benefits extended for 6 months. We're being more than fair. More than fair. For 10 years of my life. For building their billion-dollar empire. For missing my own life because I was too busy building theirs. Isabella's smile was thin, satisfied. You should be grateful, really. We gave you opportunities you'd never have gotten elsewhere. A scholarship girl from nowhere. We treated you like family. Like family. Not as family. The distinction was surgical. I stood up. The chair scraped against expensive flooring, too loud in the careful quiet of the restaurant. Other diners glanced over, then quickly away. I need air. Harper. Lucas started, finally finding his voice. Don't. The word came out sharper than I'd intended. Don't say anything. You've said enough. Or rather, you've said nothing for 6 months, which says everything. I walked out of that restaurant into the rain without a coat. The velvet box was still in my pocket. The necklace with our intertwined initials, the custom design, the 3 months of sacrificed lunches. I'd been so careful choosing it. So sure it meant something. The rain soaked through my blouse within seconds. Cold October rain that felt appropriate somehow. Like the city was washing something away. Or maybe washing me away. Erasing me the way the Whitmores had just erased a decade of my work. I stood on the sidewalk, water streaming down my face, mixing with tears I didn't remember, starting to cry. And Isabella's words echoed in my head. Not the cruelty of them, I'd heard worse. But the casualness. The ease with which she'd dismissed me. You were always useless, Harper. I would remember those words. I would carry them. And eventually I would prove her wrong. But that night, standing in the rain, I had no idea how. I don't remember getting back to Maya's apartment that night. Just fragments. The subway platform, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A homeless man asking for change I didn't have. The smell of rain-soaked concrete mixing with car exhaust. My hands shaking so badly I couldn't unlock Maya's door on the first try. She was waiting up. Maya had always been like that. The friend who showed up, who stayed, who didn't need explanations. We'd been roommates at Columbia back when life felt manageable. Back when problems had solutions and hard work actually mattered. I made tea, she said, not asking what happened. She could see it written all over me. I sat on her couch, the couch that would become my entire world, and finally opened my mouth. They fired me. At dinner. Anniversary dinner. The words came out flat, disconnected from emotion. Like I was reporting someone else's tragedy. Maya's face went through several expressions before settling on fury. Lucas was there? He knew. For 6 months. I pulled the velvet box from my pocket, set it on her coffee table. I bought him this. 3 months of lunch money. She didn't ask what was inside. Didn't try to comfort me with empty words. She just sat beside me, her presence the only stable thing in a world that had tilted sideways. You can stay as long as you need. Forever if it comes to that. 3 days later, I was still staring at her ceiling at 4 in the morning. The water stains looked like continents. Maps to places I'd never visit. Places I'd sacrificed visiting because there was always another contract to negotiate. Another crisis at Whitmore that needed my attention. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Lucas's lawyer. The divorce papers had been filed. I scrolled through the documents with numb fingers. He was keeping everything. The apartment in Chelsea we'd saved 3 years for. The car I'd made half the payments on. Even the furniture we'd picked out together. The couch we'd argued over in West Elm. The dining table his mother hated but we'd bought anyway because it was ours. I signed everything without reading it twice. Maya tried to stop me. Harper, you're entitled to half. Community property. You don't have to just give. I don't want anything that connects me to them. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. Nothing. Let him keep it all. She backed off, recognizing something in my tone that meant the conversation was over. Day 5 brought more paperwork. Benefits termination. 401k dissolution. The systematic dismantling of a decade, reduced to forms requiring my signature. I signed them all sitting at Maya's kitchen table, her cat watching me with judgment I probably deserved. You need to eat, Maya said that evening, setting down a plate of pasta I hadn't asked for. You haven't eaten anything real since Thursday. I nodded. Promised I would. Waited until she left for her night shift at the hospital. Maya had always been a nurse, had always taken care of people. Then stared at the food until it went cold. The pasta congealed. The sauce separated. I couldn't bring myself to taste it. The velvet box stayed on the coffee table. Unopened. Untouched. Some things hurt too much to confront and too much to throw away. By the end of week 2, I'd sent out 42 job applications. I had a list. Companies I'd done business with. Competitors who'd tried to recruit me over the years. Startups that needed someone with my expertise. I tailored every resume, personalized every cover letter, reminded them of projects we'd collaborated on. 3 responses came back. 2 were automated rejections. Form letters that thanked me for my interest and wished me luck in my future endeavors. The 3rd was an interview request from a supply chain company in New Jersey. Finally, something. I prepared for 3 days. Researched the company inside and out. Practiced answers to questions they might ask. Wore the one good suit I'd grabbed from the apartment before Lucas changed the locks. Took 2 trains to get there because I didn't have a car anymore. The interview started well. The hiring manager, a woman named Patricia, seemed impressed. Asked smart questions. Nodded at my answers. Then her desk phone rang. She glanced at the screen and something changed in her expression. Excuse me. I need to take this. I could see the name, James Whitmore. Patricia's voice went careful. Professional. Yes, Mr. Whitmore. Of course. I understand. Thank you for the information. She hung up, wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Ms. Martinez. We've decided to go in a different direction. We'll be in touch if anything changes. We both knew nothing would change. I called my former colleagues after that. People I'd mentored, trained, helped promote. Most calls went to voicemail. Most voicemails went unreturned. 2 people were honest with me. Rachel from operations. Tom from logistics. Harper, I'm so sorry, Rachel said, her voice low like she was afraid of being overheard. James called our CO personally. Said if we hire you, Whitmore Group will terminate all existing contracts and blacklist us from future opportunities. We can't afford that. We just can't. Tom was more direct. You're toxic right now. Everyone knows it. Everyone's afraid of the Whitmores. Give it time. Maybe in a year or 2 things will cool down. A year or 2. My savings account had maybe 2 months left. Student loans were coming due. Loans I'd deferred while building the Whitmore's empire. The storage unit holding the boxes I'd salvaged cost money I didn't have. Maya tried to help. I can cover rent. You don't need to. I'm not living off you. I was already sleeping on her couch. Already eating her food. Already taking up space in a life I didn't belong in. I needed to contribute something. Anything. That's when I found the Craigslist ad. Simple. Direct. House cleaning services needed. Flexible hours. Cash daily. I stared at the posting for an hour before clicking. Pride is a strange thing. You don't realize how much of your identity is tied to your work until the work disappears. I had an MBA from Columbia. I'd negotiated contracts worth billions. I'd built supply chain infrastructure across 3 continents. And now I was applying to clean houses. Mrs. Patterson hired me over the phone. She had a grandmother's voice, warm, patient, utterly disinterested in my credentials. You have references? Not recent ones. Can you show up on time? Yes. Then you start tomorrow. I'll text you the address. The Henderson house was in Westchester. Large. Expensive. The kind of place I'd once imagined living in. Mrs. Patterson met me at the door with supplies and instructions. Deep clean. Kitchen, 3 bathrooms, living areas. They're particular about the baseboards. The work was exactly what you'd imagine. My hands in bleach water. My knees on tile floors. My back bent over a mop for hours. By noon my hands were raw. By evening they were cracked and bleeding. Every muscle I had was screaming. But when Mrs. Patterson counted out $95 at the end of the day, cash and tips combined, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Maybe even pride. Not the pride I'd felt closing billion-dollar deals. Something simpler. Cleaner. I cried on the bus ride back to Queens. Not from shame. From the sheer weight of still being functional. Still being capable of earning money, even if it wasn't the money I'd once earned. Maya noticed my hands that night. Harper, you're bleeding. I'm working. You have an MBA from. I'm working, I repeated harder. It's honest work. And right now it's what I have. She bandaged my hands without arguing. That was Maya. She knew when to push and when to just be there. The next few weeks blurred together. Different houses. Different families. Same work. My coworkers, Rosa, Amelia, Chin, didn't ask about my past. Didn't care about my education or my failures. I was just Harper. The new girl who showed up on time and didn't complain. Then October came. Cold and early. I was cleaning the Riverside estate. 7 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, more square footage than most people see in a lifetime. I was emptying a trash can in the master suite when I heard the car pull up. Mercedes. But new enough to still have that showroom shine. Isabella Whitmore stepped out wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than I'd make in a month. She saw me through the window. I watched her face change, surprise giving way to something else. Satisfaction maybe. Vindication. She walked to where I was standing, didn't bother lowering her voice. Well, this is appropriate. I heard rumors you were doing this work. I didn't believe them. Rosa was watching from the doorway. The client, Mrs. Ashford, was watching from inside. Isabella wanted an audience. This was theater. You were always useless, Harper. Women like me build legacies. Women like you clean our houses. She smiled, the expression sharp and satisfied. James was right. We were lucky we tolerated you as long as we did. Rosa started toward us, anger making her movements sharp. But I shook my head slightly. Not yet. Isabella drove away laughing. The sound echoed even after her car disappeared down the long driveway. I finished my shift in silence. Cleaned the remaining bathrooms. Mopped the kitchen floor. Collected my pay from Mrs. Ashford, who looked uncomfortable but said nothing. That night I sat in Maya's dark apartment until morning came. Something had changed. Not anger, I was too tired for anger. Something colder. Clearer. They thought they'd destroyed me. They thought reducing me to this would break me permanently. They were wrong. The morning after Isabella's visit, I woke up on Maya's couch with something unfamiliar settling in my chest. Not quite anger. Not quite determination. Something in between, a cold clarity that made the air feel sharper. I had 3 houses scheduled that day. The Ashfords were last. A sprawling estate in Scarsdale with more rooms than I could clean in one visit. Mrs. Patterson had warned me about them. They're particular, she'd said, which was code for difficult. The gray Lexus pulled up just as I was loading supplies into the van. Wednesday morning. Late November. The kind of cold that threatened snow but hadn't committed yet. I noticed the car immediately. Luxury sedans weren't uncommon in this neighborhood, but something about the way it parked, deliberate and unhurried, made me look twice. The woman who stepped out was 60-something, silver hair styled in a way that suggested weekly salon appointments. Her camel coat looked like it cost more than my entire month's earnings. She walked toward me with purpose, her heels clicking against the pavement. Harper Martinez, she said. My stomach dropped. Nobody here knew my last name. I'd been just Harper for weeks now. Harper who cleaned houses, Harper who showed up on time, Harper who didn't talk about her past. I'm sorry, do I? Catherine Brennan. She extended her hand, her grip firm when I shook it. We met 7 years ago. Singapore. You were negotiating warehouse contracts for the Whitmore Group. The memory surfaced slowly, reluctantly. Singapore. July. Humidity so thick it felt like breathing soup. A conference room with windows that didn't open. James sitting at the head of the table performing authority. And Catherine Brennan representing the Tanaka Logistics Consortium, asking questions that actually mattered while everyone else played territorial games. I remember, I said carefully. You asked about scalability metrics when everyone else was focused on pricing. Her smile was brief but genuine. You were the only person in that room who had real answers. Everyone else was performing competence. You actually possessed it. I didn't know what to say to that. Compliments felt like traps now. I heard you were let go from Whitmore, Catherine continued, her voice carrying no judgment, just statement of fact. I heard it wasn't about performance. Where did you hear that? Industry talks. People notice when someone builds something significant and then suddenly disappears. He paused, studying me. Family business. Those are the worst kind. They confuse loyalty with ownership, contribution with obligation. Part of me wanted to walk away. Pretend I didn't know her. Protect whatever small amount of dignity I had left. But Catherine had been different in Singapore. One of the few people who'd addressed me directly instead of routing everything through James. Mrs. Brennan. Catherine, please. Catherine. I appreciate the acknowledgement. But I need to finish loading this van. I have a schedule. I know. The Ashfords are particular about their baseboards. She said it without mockery, just observation. I'm friends with Eleanor Ashford. She mentioned hiring a new cleaner who was oddly overqualified. Described you. I wanted to verify. The cold was seeping through my jacket. My breath came out in small clouds. Verify what? That you're the same Harper Martinez who rebuilt Whitmore's entire Asian infrastructure. That you're the same person who negotiated the Melbourne deal, which by the way is still the gold standard in the industry for fair partnership structures. Catherine's expression shifted, became more intent. I have a question. Do you remember the paperwork you signed when you started at Whitmore? The very beginning, when James first brought you on board. The question felt loaded. Dangerous. There was a lot of paperwork. A stock agreement. Minor equity stake. James would have presented it as symbolic. The memory was fuzzy, 10 years old, buried under a decade of other documents and decisions. 0.3%, I said slowly. He said it was to make me feel invested. Part of the team. Catherine's smile was sharp enough to cut. 0.3% of Whitmore Group before the Asian expansion. Before the automation implementation you designed. Before the 3 acquisitions they completed in the last 8 months using infrastructure you built. Before the Melbourne deal closed and added $2 billion in valuation. She let that information settle, watching my face. The company you helped build is now worth approximately $16 billion. And if they forgot to terminate that equity in your severance, which incompetent family businesses often do, you might own more of that company than you think. My brain tried to do the math, but the numbers felt too big, too impossible. 0.3% of 16 billion. 40-something million. The amount didn't feel real. Couldn't be real. That's not possible, I whispered. They wouldn't forget something like that. James is too thorough. James is arrogant. And arrogant men make careless mistakes, especially when they're in a hurry to erase someone. Catherine pulled a business card from her coat pocket. Heavy stock. Embossed lettering. Diane Morrison. Corporate law. She's the best attorney in New York. Completely ethical, absolutely vicious. She specializes in cases where women get screwed by family businesses. I took the card automatically, my fingers numb from cold and shock. I have a confession, Catherine continued, moving toward her car. Isabella Whitmore tried to steal a contract from me 5 years ago. Used every dirty trick in the book. Underbid, spread rumors about our reliability, called in favors with mutual contacts. We lost that contract. Cost us 6 months of revenue. I'm sorry. Don't be. We survived. But I've been waiting for an opportunity to return the favor. She opened her car door, then looked back at me. You built that company, Harper. Everyone in the industry knows it. Everyone except the Whitmores, apparently. Check your paperwork. Those shares are still yours. You're not cleaning houses anymore. You're a shareholder. And shareholders have rights. She drove away, leaving me standing in the cold with a business card and a possibility I was too afraid to believe. I cleaned the Ashford house in a daze. Scrubbed bathrooms I didn't see. Mopped floors I couldn't focus on. Mrs. Ashford commented that I seemed distracted. I apologized, said I wasn't feeling well, finished the job as quickly as I could. On the bus back to Queens, I stared at the business card. Diane Morrison. The embossing caught the afternoon light. I kept thinking about Catherine's words. They forgot to terminate that equity. Those shares are still yours. That night I couldn't sleep. Maya had a late shift, so I was alone with my thoughts and the box of Whitmore documents I'd been avoiding. At 2 a.m, I finally pulled it out from under the couch. The box was heavier than I remembered. 10 years of papers. 10 years of proof that I'd existed in their world, even if they wanted to pretend I hadn't. I started searching. Methodically. Page by page. The severance agreement was near the top. 3 months salary, benefits extended for 6 months, non-compete clause, confidentiality requirements. No mention of equity. Divorce settlement. Lucas kept the apartment, the car, the savings account we'd built together. I kept my student loans and my clothes. No mention of shares. NDA. Couldn't discuss proprietary information, couldn't disparage the company, couldn't reveal trade secrets. Nothing about stock ownership. Intellectual property transfer. All work product belonged to Whitmore Group. All innovations and systems I'd developed became their property. But nothing about equity termination. Benefits termination letter. 401k dissolution forms. Health insurance cancellation. Nothing. 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 And then at the very bottom of the box, yellowed and creased, the original stock certificate. The Whitmore Group hereby issues 0.3% equity ownership to Harper Martinez, effective January 15, 2014. This ownership stake carries full voting rights and dividend participation as outlined in the company bylaws. Signed by James Whitmore. Witnessed by their corporate attorney. Filed with the Secretary of State. 10 years old. Still valid. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. I read it 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. Looking for the clause that would invalidate it. The expiration date. The buyback provision. The termination language. There wasn't any. I grabbed my phone. It was 2:47 a.m. but I couldn't wait. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything except send the text before I lost my nerve. My name is Harper Martinez. Catherine Brennan gave me your card. I need to know if I still own part of the company that destroyed my life. The response came back in under 2 minutes. Come see me tomorrow. 9 a.m. Bring everything. I sat there on Maya's couch, holding a yellowed piece of paper that might be worth $47 million, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Dangerous and terrifying and impossible to ignore. I didn't sleep after sending that text. Just lay on Maya's couch watching the ceiling until gray light started filtering through her curtains. At 6 a.m. I gave up pretending and made coffee, my hands still trembling slightly as I held the stock certificate. Maya emerged from her bedroom at 7, took one look at me and stopped in her tracks. You look like you've seen a ghost. I might own $47 million. She blinked. Process. I'm going to need you to repeat that. I showed her the certificate. Explained Catherine Brennan's visit. Watched Maya's expression cycle through disbelief, hope and careful skepticism. Harper, are you sure this is real? Not some, I don't know, scam. Catherine Brennan is real. I worked with her in Singapore. And this, I held up the certificate, has James Whitmore's signature. Then why are you cleaning houses if you're secretly a millionaire? Because I might not be. Because the Whitmores have lawyers. Because this might be a mistake or a loophole they'll close the second they realize it exists. I set down my coffee cup before I dropped it. I have an appointment at 9. With an attorney Catherine recommended. Maya's nursing instincts kicked in. Have you eaten? I can't. You're eating. She pulled out bread, started making toast. You're not walking into a lawyer's office on an empty stomach. That's how you faint. The toast tasted like cardboard, but I forced it down. Maya insisted on coming with me, said she'd call in to work, but I shook my head. I need to do this alone. The address Diane Morrison had texted was in Midtown. A building I'd walked past 100 times during my Whitmore days without really seeing it. Glass and steel reaching into the sky, the kind of building that housed hedge funds and corporate law firms and decisions worth more money than most people saw in a lifetime. The elevator to the 53rd floor was empty except for me and a man in an expensive suit who didn't look at me once. I was wearing the same outfit I'd worn to that failed interview weeks ago. The only professional clothes I still owned. It felt inadequate. Everything felt inadequate. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that screamed money. Marble floors. Minimalist furniture. A receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Harper Martinez, I said. I have a 9 o'clock with Diane Morrison. She's expecting you. The receptionist smiled. Professional, practiced. Conference room 3. Down the hall, last door on your right. Diane Morrison was younger than I expected. Maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and a charcoal suit that looked custom-tailored. She stood when I entered, her handshake firm and assessing. Catherine says you might have an equity stake in a company that fired you, she began without preamble. No small talk. No weather commentary. Just straight to business. The Whitmore Group. Logistics and supply chain. That correct? Yes. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You brought documentation? I handed over the folder. The stock certificate, the severance agreement, the divorce papers, everything I'd pulled from that box. Diane spread them across the conference table with practiced efficiency, her eyes scanning pages with speed that suggested she'd done this 1,000 times. The silence stretched. 10 minutes of nothing but the sound of pages turning and my heartbeat hammering in my ears. I became acutely aware of how I looked. My cleaned but worn clothes, my hands still rough from cleaning chemicals, the exhaustion that had become my default state. Diane didn't seem to notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. Finally, she looked up. This is legitimate. Properly executed. Filed with the Secretary of State. 0.3% equity, no expiration, no buyback clause, no forfeiture language. She tapped the stock certificate. It's clean. I released a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. And the severance agreement? Diane flipped through those pages again, her expression shifting into something that might have been satisfaction. Doesn't mention it. Not once. They covered intellectual property, non-compete clauses, confidentiality agreements. They covered everything except the one thing that actually matters. They forgot. They forgot, Diane confirmed. Her smile was sharp. Dangerous. 0.3% of Whitmore Group's current valuation, $15.8 billion as of their last filing, is $47.4 million. The number hung in the air between us. 47 million. More money than I could conceptualize. More money than my parents had earned in their entire lives combined. If they IPO at 20 billion next spring, which is their stated target, and you retain your shares, you're looking at 60 million. If the stock performs as analysts are predicting, possibly 120 million within 3 years. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the conference table. But there's a problem, Diane continued, and my stomach dropped. If they discover you're claiming this stake, they'll fight hard. James Whitmore will drown you in motions and legal fees until you give up. That's what men like him do to women who challenge them. So I can't win. The hope that had been building crumbled. I didn't say that. Diane leaned back in her chair, studying me. Here's what they don't know. Their IPO prospectus, which they filed preliminary versions of last month, must disclose all shareholders above 0.1%. Your name isn't on it. Maybe they bought me out and I forgot? Did you receive $47 million? No. Then they didn't buy you out. Which means they either genuinely forgot you exist, or they're committing securities fraud by omitting a material shareholder. Either way, the SEC would be very interested. Diane pulled out a legal pad, started sketching what looked like a strategy flowchart. Here's how this works. We file a formal claim asserting your shareholder rights. We give them 30 days to respond. They'll panic, call emergency board meetings, scramble their lawyers, try to figure out how this happened. Then they'll come to us with offers. Big offers. Scary big offers designed to make you shut up and disappear. How big? Initial offer will probably be 20, maybe 25 million. They'll frame it as generous. More than fair. They'll add confidentiality agreements and non-disparagement clauses. They'll make it sound like you're winning. But I'm not. But you're not. Diane's eyes were sharp. Because if you take the money, you disappear. The story becomes, disgruntled employee got a payday. But if you refuse, if you insist on being recognized as a legitimate shareholder with full voting rights, you force them to either fight you in court, which delays their IPO and costs them hundreds of millions, or add you to their prospectus. Make you permanent. She leaned forward. So my question is, what do you want? Is this about money? Because if it is, I'll negotiate the best buyout possible. 30-40 million. Walk away and rebuild your life. No one would blame you. I thought about Isabella's laugh. You were always useless, Harper. I thought about Lucas sitting silent while his family destroyed me. I thought about James's cold dismissal, his certainty that I was nothing without them. I want them to know they were wrong, I said quietly. I want proof. Not money. Proof. Diane nodded slowly like I'd passed some kind of test. Then we file a formal claim. We give them 30 days. They'll panic, offer you numbers designed to make you fold. And you say no. We negotiate only for recognition as a legitimate shareholder with full voting rights. We make this about principle, not money. He paused, holding my gaze. It'll drive them insane. Men like James Whitmore don't lose. And they especially don't lose to women they've already defeated. This will be ugly. They'll investigate you, try to find leverage, make your life difficult in ways you can't anticipate. They already made my life difficult. Fair point. Diane pulled out an engagement letter. My retainer is $15,000. Standard rate for cases like this. My heart sank. I had maybe $2,000 left. I don't have that kind of money. Catherine already paid it. Diane slid the letter across the table. She called this morning. Said to consider it an investment. Apparently, she really doesn't like Isabella Whitmore. I stared at the engagement letter. This was real. This was actually happening. If I sign this, there's no going back? If you sign this, we're going to war. Diane's expression was serious. And wars are messy. But wars can also be won. Your choice. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady when I signed. Good. Diane gathered the papers. I'll file the claim Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, your life is going to get very interesting. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because of the money, the number still didn't feel real. But because someone believed me. Someone looked at what the Whitmores had done and said it was wrong. Maya was waiting when I got back to her apartment, had taken the day off after all. Well, we're filing a claim. For $47 million? For recognition. For proof. I sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. Maya, what if this doesn't work? What if they find a way around it? Then you're exactly where you are now. Cleaning houses. Sleeping on my couch. Surviving. She sat beside me. But Harper, what if it does work? What if you win? I didn't have an answer for that. Winning felt too dangerous to imagine. That weekend I tried to prepare myself for what was coming. Diane had filed the claim Monday morning. By Monday afternoon she'd said my life would get interesting. He was right. The first call came at 2:47 p.m. I was cleaning the Morrison house in Yonkers, ironically no relation to Diane, when my phone started buzzing. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring through to voicemail. The second call came 3 minutes later. Marcus again. Then a number I didn't recognize. Then another unknown number. By 3 o'clock my phone had buzzed 17 times. I excused myself, told Mrs. Morrison I needed to take a call, and stepped into her backyard. Clicked on the first voicemail. Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. Whatever game you're playing, it needs to stop. You signed a severance agreement. You have no claim to anything. Call me back immediately. Delete. The second voicemail was James. Colder. More measured. This is highly inappropriate, Harper. We treated you fairly, more than fairly. Your severance was generous. This claim is frivolous at best, malicious at worst. I expect to hear from you or your counsel by end of business tomorrow. Delete. The third was Lucas. Harper, please. Please call me back. My father is losing his mind. Marcus is threatening to sue you into oblivion. It's chaos here. We need to discuss this like adults. Please. Like adults. As if they'd been adults when they'd planned my firing over 6 months. As if they'd been adults when they'd humiliated me at that anniversary dinner. I deleted every voicemail without listening to the rest. Turned off my phone. Finished cleaning the Morrison house in silence. Diane texted that evening. *17 missed calls from Whitmore-affiliated numbers. Perfect. Let them panic. Desperation makes people stupid. *. Tuesday brought more calls. Wednesday, an email from their corporate counsel demanding I cease and desist from making fraudulent claims against the Whitmore Group. Diane forwarded it to the SE. Thursday afternoon they agreed to meet. I arrived at Diane's office 30 minutes early. Sat in the same conference room where I'd first signed the engagement letter and watched the elevator numbers climb on the display screen in the lobby. My heart hammered with each ascending floor. 51. 52. 53. The elevator doors opened and James emerged first. He looked exactly as I remembered, commanding, authoritative, furious beneath a veneer of control. Marcus followed, his expression somewhere between smug and panicked. Then their chief counsel, a man I'd met once or twice during my Whitmore years. Two outside attorneys I didn't recognize, both carrying briefcases like they were weapons. And then Lucas. He looked smaller than I remembered. Tired. His suit hung differently on him like he'd lost weight. Our eyes met for half a second before he looked away and I felt something twist in my chest. Not love. Not anymore. But the ghost of it. The memory of what we'd been before his family destroyed us. James didn't sit. Stood at the head of the conference table like he was running a board meeting. This is unnecessary, Harper. That equity stake was a courtesy. A gesture of goodwill when you joined the company. This claim is frivolous and frankly insulting. Diane's voice was ice. The claim is legally valid. The equity was never terminated. Your severance agreement doesn't mention it. The divorce settlement doesn't mention it. There's no paperwork anywhere that invalidates Ms. Martinez's ownership stake. You made a mistake, Mr. Whitmore. It happens. We're prepared to be reasonable, one of the outside attorneys interjected. We're prepared to settle. If you recognize Ms. Martinez as a shareholder with full voting rights, Diane finished. Yes, that would be a settlement we'd consider. $20 million, the attorney said. Final offer. Ms. Martinez can walk away, rebuild her life, and we can all move forward. The number hung in the air. 20 million. More money than I'd ever dreamed of having. More money than my parents had earned in their combined lifetimes. Security. Safety. Freedom. I looked at James. At Marcus. At Lucas, still refusing to meet my eyes. No, I said. The room went silent. Marcus broke it first. Are you insane? You're cleaning houses for minimum wage and you're turning down $20 million. I'm turning down $20 million, I confirmed. James's face went red. 25 million. That's as high as we'll go. Take it or we'll bury you in litigation for decades. We have resources you can't begin to imagine. We'll fight this until you're drowning in legal fees. Diane leaned forward, her expression perfectly calm. Your IPO prospectus is due for final SEC filing in 6 weeks. Right now it's incomplete. You failed to disclose a material shareholder. Anyone holding more than 0.1% must be listed. That's securities fraud, Mr. Whitmore. The penalties are severe. The delays could be catastrophic. Your investors won't appreciate learning you omitted a shareholder worth $47 million. James's jaw clenched. I watched him calculate, saw the moment he realized Diane wasn't bluffing. Saw him understand that his options were narrowing. We need time to discuss this, he said finally. You have until Monday, Diane replied. After that we're filing with the SEC. They left in a storm of barely contained rage. All of them except Lucas, who lingered near the door. Harper. His voice was soft. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I looked at Diane. She nodded. Conference room 2 is open. Take your time. The smaller conference room felt suffocating. Lucas closed the door, ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was stressed. I know you're angry, he began. I'm not angry. The words came out flat. True. I'm just done. This isn't you. Destroying my family's company. I'm not destroying anything. I interrupted. I'm claiming what's mine. What was always mine. Your father gave me that equity. I earned it. And then you all forgot about it when you decided I was disposable. We didn't forget. He stopped, caught in the lie. You just what? Hoped I wouldn't notice? Hoped I'd be too broken to check. Lucas's face crumpled slightly. They'll fight you forever. Years of litigation. Your name in the media. Everyone will know your business. Everyone already knows my business. Your mother made sure of that when she found me cleaning houses. He flinched. I didn't know she was going to do that. But you didn't stop her. Just like you didn't stop your father from firing me. Just like you didn't stop any of it. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. I want them to tell the truth, Lucas. I want everyone who invests in Whitmore Group to know that I built what they're buying. That the Asian expansion was mine. That the automation systems were mine. That the Melbourne deal happened because of me. He'll never admit that. Then I keep my shares. I vote against every board decision. I attend every shareholder meeting. I become a permanent reminder of his biggest mistake. Lucas stood to move toward me, then stopped. Is that what you want? To spend the rest of your life fighting us? I want what I earned. My voice was steady. Clear. That's all I've ever wanted. He looked at me for a long moment. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not standing up for you. For letting them. Your apology doesn't change anything. I know. His voice broke slightly. I just needed you to hear it. He left without another word. I stayed in that conference room for 10 minutes, letting my heartbeat slow, letting the adrenaline drain away. When I emerged, Diane was waiting. You okay? I turned down $25 million. You did. Am I crazy? She smiled. Probably. But you're also right. And sometimes being right is worth more than being rich. That night, Maya made me repeat the entire story twice. You turned down $25 million. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's insane, Harper. That's life-changing money. The shares are worth $47 million. More if the IPO goes well. If you get them. If they don't find a way to destroy you first. Maya wasn't being cruel, just practical. What if they do bury you in litigation? What if you spend years fighting and end up with nothing? Then I end up with nothing. Which is exactly what I have now. I looked at her. But at least I'll know I fought. At least I'll know I didn't let them erase me. Maya hugged me then. Hart, you're either the bravest person I know or the most stubborn. Can't it be both? My phone buzzed. Text from Diane. Asterisk, they want another meeting. Tomorrow. Without lawyers. Just James and you. Asterisk. I stared at the message. James wanted to talk. Alone. Without the safety of attorneys and conference rooms and witnesses. What do I do? I texted back. Your call. But if you go, I'd record it. New York is one-party consent. Whatever he says we can use. I thought about it. About facing James without armor. About hearing whatever he wanted to say when he thought no one else was listening. Set it up, I texted. Tomorrow afternoon. Maya looked at me. What now? Now I go face the man who destroyed my life and see what he has to say for himself. The meeting with James never happened. Friday afternoon, Diane called with different news. They refused the private meeting. Instead, they're filing a motion to dismiss your claim as frivolous. Her voice carried something between amusement and satisfaction. Which means they're panicking. People who are confident don't file motions on Friday afternoons hoping no one notices. What does that mean for us? It means we accelerate. I'm filing with the SEC Monday morning. 9 a.m. By noon, this becomes public record. I sat down on Maya's couch, phone pressed to my ear. Public. Public, Diane confirmed. Every news outlet that covers business will pick it up. Your name will be in headlines. The Whitmores won't be able to bury this quietly. I don't want to be in headlines. I know. But Harper, you also don't want to be erased. And right now those are your options. Go public or disappear. She paused. Sleep on it. But I need an answer by Sunday. I didn't sleep on it. I called her back Saturday morning. File it. Monday morning I was scrubbing a bathtub in Bronxville when my phone started buzzing. Maya first. Then Catherine Brennan. Then numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all until Mrs. Patterson knocked on the bathroom door. Harper. There's a reporter outside asking for you. My stomach dropped. A reporter? Says she's from Bloomberg. Something about Whitmore Group. I finished the bathroom in a daze, collected my pay and left through the back door to avoid the reporter. Checked my phone in the car. 17 missed calls. 43 text messages. Maya's text was simplest. Turn on the news. I pulled up Bloomberg on my phone. The headline was stark. Whitmore Group IPO faces unexpected shareholder dispute. The article detailed everything. My role in building their Asian infrastructure. The Melbourne deal. The automation systems. The equity stake they'd forgotten to terminate. By the time I finished reading, Reuters had picked it up. Then Wall Street Journal. Then Business Insider. By evening I was trending on social media. Maya showed me her phone that night, scrolling through Twitter. #Justice for Harper. #HouseCleaner. Thousands of comments. Tens of thousands. Women sharing their own stories. Fired after maternity leave, pushed out of family businesses, discarded by companies they'd helped build. "You're a hero," Maya said, her voice filled with something like wonder. "I'm not a hero. I'm just tired of being erased." But the attention was overwhelming. Reporters called my phone. Numbers I'd never given out but they'd found somehow. LinkedIn messages. Instagram DMs. Everyone wanted a comment, a quote, an interview. I ignored them all. The articles kept coming. Some were sympathetic, detailing my contributions to Whitmore Group, interviewing former colleagues who corroborated my work. Others were skeptical, suggesting I was an opportunist trying to exploit a technicality. Wednesday brought an article that changed things. Wall Street Journal interviewed former colleagues, including David Chin, Whitmore's former VP of Operations. Harper Martinez was the operational genius behind Whitmore's transformation, he told them. Everyone in the industry knows it. Everyone except the Whitmores, apparently. Letting her go was the stupidest decision James Whitmore ever made. I watched her negotiate the Sydney contract. She saved us $3 million by simply understanding the local logistics better than anyone else in the room. That's not luck. That's skill. My phone rang at 8 p.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Ms. Martinez?" "Victoria Chin. I'm the CFO of Meridian Holdings. I don't want to comment for any articles. I'm not a reporter." Her voice was warm, professional. "I'm calling with a proposal. What if you didn't have to fight Whitmore for scraps? What if you could build something new?" I sat up straighter. "I'm listening. We're a private equity firm focused on logistics and supply chain investments. We've been watching the Whitmore situation with great interest. More specifically, we've been watching you." She paused. "I'd like to discuss funding Martinez Global Logistics. $200 million in seed capital. You'd provide expertise and leadership. We'd provide resources. $200 million. 60% initial equity, decreasing to 40% over 5 years as you hit performance milestones. Full operational control. CEO title. Board seat guaranteed." Victoria's voice carried certainty. "Ms. Martinez, you built Whitmore Group into what it is today. Imagine what you could build if you controlled it from the start." "Why me?" "Because you're not just someone. You're a story. You're proof that talent matters more than pedigree, that hard work matters more than birthright. In an age where people are exhausted by dynasty and nepotism, you're something rare. A woman who earned everything and got screwed for it." She paused. "That's not just good business, Ms. Martinez. That's justice. And justice sells." We met Thursday. Victoria's office was in a different building but same atmosphere. Glass, steel, money. Her team included analysts, operations specialists, market researchers. They'd done their homework. Known my track record better than I did. Had projections, market analyses, competitive strategies already mapped out. I read the term sheet 3 times. Called Diane, who reviewed it and called it remarkably clean. Friday afternoon I signed it. The announcement went out Monday morning. Martinez Global Logistics, backed by $200 million in private equity, launching in direct competition with Whitmore Group. Harper Martinez named CEO. Whitmore's stock dropped 4% in the first hour. Maya was at work when it happened, but she texted me a screenshot. "You're trending again. But this time you're not the victim. You're the threat." He was right. The narrative had shifted. Articles that had been sympathetic now carried a different tone. Former house cleaner launches rival company. Whitmore dispute escalates to direct competition. Harper Martinez, from fired executive to CEO. My phone rang at 2 p.m. James Whitmore. I stared at his name on the screen, then answered. "This is a declaration of war," he said. No greeting. No preamble. Just rage barely controlled. I tried to be reasonable. "I offered you more money than you'll see in 10 lifetimes. But you chose this." "I chose to build something that can't be taken away from me," I said. That's not war. That's survival. We'll destroy you. You think you understand this industry? You don't know what you're up against. I built your Asian expansion, James. I designed your automation systems. I negotiated your biggest deals. I know exactly what I'm up against. And I know your weaknesses better than anyone. The silence on the other end was thick. Heavy. You'll regret this, he said finally. Maybe. But I'll regret it as a CEO, not as someone who cleans your family's toilets. I hung up. That night Maya brought home champagne. Cheap stuff from the bodega, but it felt appropriate. We toasted on her couch. The couch that had been my home for months, that had witnessed my complete collapse and slow rebuilding. You're really doing this, Maya said, half laughing, half terrified. You're really going to compete with them. I'm really going to beat them. And for the first time in months I believed it. By the end of the week I had 12 employees. 4 were former Whitmore workers who'd quietly resigned and reached out. They'd seen the articles. Seen the opportunity. Wanted to be part of something different. 3 were consultants with deep logistics experience who'd followed my career and wanted in. 2 were tech specialists Victoria had recruited. Young, hungry, brilliant. 1 was an HR director who'd left her corporate job because she was tired of working for companies with no soul. 1 was a CFO with 20 years of experience who said I reminded her of herself 30 years ago. And 1 was Marcus Chin. No relation to Victoria, he joked during his interview. My former operations manager at Whitmore. Why are you here? I asked him, genuinely curious. You had a good position. Marcus would have promoted you eventually. Marcus leaned forward. When Marcus Whitmore took over your role, he called a department meeting. Told everyone you'd been let go because you weren't family material. That you'd never really understood the business, that you'd gotten lucky with a few deals but lacked real vision. He paused. Half the room knew it was garbage. But the other half wanted to believe it. Because believing otherwise meant admitting they worked for people who destroyed talent out of spite. And you gave me my first promotion, Harper. Took a chance on me when I was just an analyst with ideas. Taught me everything I know about operations management. Stayed late helping me prepare for presentations even though you had your own deadlines. He met my eyes. I'm here because you deserve better than what they did to you. And because I want to help you prove them wrong. That moment, sitting in our temporary office space with 12 people who believed in me, felt like validation I hadn't known I needed. We were real. We were happening. And somewhere across the city, the Whitmores were realizing they'd made a terrible mistake. The first 6 months of Martinez Global were chaos wrapped in possibility. Beautiful, exhausting, terrifying chaos. We moved from temporary office space to a real building in Long Island City. 3 floors. Conference rooms with actual furniture instead of folding tables. A break room where people gathered and laughed. I hired an office manager who made sure we had coffee and printer paper and all the small things that make a company feel real. By March we had 30 employees. By May 60. By July, 87 people who'd chosen to bet on me, on the vision we were building together. Revenue projections had been conservative. Victoria and her team had estimated $40 million for our first year. By June we were tracking towards $73 million. Every client we landed felt like proof that we were real, that we could compete, that I hadn't been crazy to turn down $25 million. Meanwhile, across the city, Whitmore Group was struggling. Their IPO, originally scheduled for March, got delayed to May. Then to July. Investor confidence was shaky. The business press was asking questions. Why the delays? What was happening internally? Their Q1 earnings report, when it finally came, told the story. Declining margins in Asia. Problems with the Melbourne contract. The one I'd spent 6 months negotiating, the one I'd built on relationships and trust instead of just numbers. Turns out when you replace the person who built those relationships, the relationships deteriorate. Marcus Whitmore, golden child, art school graduate, the one who'd found himself while I built their empire, was failing. Publicly. Measurably. Forbes ran a feature in June, The Revenge of Harper Martinez, How a Fired Executive Built a Better Company. The article was brutal to the Whitmores, glowing about Martinez Global. They'd interviewed clients, former colleagues, industry analysts. Everyone said the same thing. Harper Martinez was the real talent. The Whitmores had just been lucky to have her. But while the public story was vindicating, the legal battle raged on. Whitmore filed motion after motion. Frivolous claims, Diane called them. Desperation moves. Trying to find any angle, any technicality that might invalidate my equity stake. Diane countered everyone. The litigation was exhausting. Expensive. I'd signed over 20% of my Martinez Global equity to cover legal fees because I refused to let the Whitmores bury me in costs. Some days I wanted to give up. Take whatever money they'd offer. Walk away. Build my company without the distraction of fighting them. Maya would find me in my office at midnight, staring at legal documents, and ask if it was worth it. I'd remember Isabella's laugh. Her contempt. Her certainty that I was nothing. And I'd keep fighting. Tuesday morning in late July, Diane called. I was in a meeting with our operations team, reviewing expansion plans for the Southeast. Saw her name on my phone and excused myself immediately. Tell me, I said, stepping into the hallway. The judge just ruled. Diane's voice carried something I'd rarely heard from her. Pure, unfiltered satisfaction. Final ruling. Your equity stake is valid. All of it. 0.3% of Whitmore Group belongs to you, free and clear. I sat down on the floor right there in the hallway, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. Say that again. You won, Harper. Completely. Decisively. The judge rejected every single argument Whitmore made. Your equity is valid. Has been valid for 10 years. They never terminated it. They can't terminate it now. How much? Based on their most recent valuation, which they filed with the SEC last week, $47.4 million. She paused. Plus damages for bad faith litigation. The judge awarded you another $5.8 million to cover legal fees and lost opportunity costs. $53.2 million. The number didn't feel real. Couldn't be real. I'd been sleeping on Maya's couch 8 months ago. Scrubbing toilets. Making $95 a day. Harper, are you still there? I'm here. My voice came out rough. I need a minute. Take your time. But there's more. Diane's satisfaction deepened. The judge included specific language in her ruling. She said, and I'm reading directly, Whitmore Group's attempts to invalidate Ms. Martinez's equity stake constitute bad faith litigation designed to deprive Ms. Martinez of her lawful ownership interest. The evidence suggests a systematic effort to erase Ms. Martinez's contributions and ownership through intimidation and procedural abuse. She called them out. She eviscerated them. This ruling will be cited in corporate law classes for years. You didn't just win, Harper. You won in a way that makes them look petty and vindictive and incompetent. I closed my eyes, leaned my head back against the wall. They're going to offer a buyout. Within the hour, I'd guess. Do you want the money? It was the same question she'd asked months ago. Take the money and walk away. Rebuild. Move on. $53 million would set me up for life. I could expand Martinez Global without investors. Buy a real apartment. Never worry about money again. But I'd already built Martinez Global. Already proven I could succeed without them. The money didn't matter the way it once had. No, I said. I want the shares. The actual shares. I want my name in their prospectus. I want to sit in their annual meetings. You want them to see you. Every single time they celebrate success I built. Yes. Diane laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll file the paperwork this afternoon. By tomorrow you'll be a registered shareholder. They'll have to add you to their IPO documents. They'll have to acknowledge you. The news broke within hours. My phone exploded again. Reporters, investors, former colleagues. I ignored most of them. But when CNBC called asking for an interview, Diane advised me to take it. Control the narrative, she said. Tell your story before they tell it for you. Jennifer Park was the anchor. Sharp, experienced, known for asking questions that made executives squirm. We did the interview live from CNBC's studios in Englewood Cliffs. Ms. Martinez, she began, you're now worth over $50 million. You're running a successful competitor to the company that fired you. Does this feel like vindication? The question was straightforward, but the answer wasn't. 6 months ago I would have said yes immediately. Vindication was exactly what I'd wanted. Proof. Validation. Evidence that I'd mattered. But sitting there, having spent 6 months building something new, something mine, the answer felt more complicated. It feels like clarity, I said finally. For a long time I questioned whether I'd contributed anything meaningful to Whitmore. Whether I'd been lucky or skilled, valuable or just useful. Now I know. The market knows. The law knows. I built something real. They couldn't erase that no matter how hard they tried. Your former employer tried very hard, according to court documents. They did. But trying to erase someone doesn't make them disappear. It just makes you look afraid of what they represent. The clip went viral. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Women sharing it, men sharing it, business students analyzing it. The phrase trying to erase someone doesn't make them disappear became a hashtag. Maya showed me that night. We were back at her apartment. I still hadn't moved out, kept meaning to, but there was always something more urgent at work. You're officially famous, she said, scrolling through Twitter. Harper Martinez, business philosopher. I just said what I was thinking. That's usually when people say the most important things. 3 days later, a courier arrived at my office. Friday afternoon. Most of the staff had left early for the weekend. I was alone reviewing contracts when my assistant buzzed. Harper, there's a delivery for you. Requires signature. The envelope was heavy. Expensive stationery. The kind James Whitmore had always used for important correspondence. I signed for it, closed my office door and opened it carefully. Handwritten letter. 2 pages. His handwriting, I recognized it from a decade of memos and notes. Harper, I'm writing this against the advice of my lawyers, my family and my better judgment. But some things need to be said directly, not through attorneys or press releases. You were right about the Asian expansion. About the automation systems. About the Melbourne deal. About how to treat employees, how to build partnerships, how to run a company with integrity instead of just authority. You were right about everything and I was too proud to admit it. When I brought you into Whitmore, I saw something I wished I'd seen in my own son. Talent, yes. But more than that, vision. The ability to see what needed to be done and the courage to do it even when it was difficult. I thought if I could shape you, mold you, maybe I could prove to myself that leadership is taught, not inherited. But the more successful you became, the more it exposed Marcus's inadequacies. And instead of dealing with that honestly, instead of acknowledging that my son wasn't suited for operations, I blamed you. Convinced myself you were the problem. That you were too ambitious, too aggressive, not family-oriented enough. Firing you was the worst business decision I've ever made. But worse than that, it was cruel. I knew what I was doing. Knew that terminating you without warning at a family dinner would destroy you. I wanted it to. Wanted to punish you for being better than my son. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing this only to say that you were right and I was wrong. About everything. And whatever success Whitmore Group achieved, you built the foundation. You were the architect. We were just the name on the door. James. I read it 3 times. Felt anger first, rage at his cruelty, at his calculated destruction of my life. Then sadness. For Lucas, for what we'd been, for the years I'd wasted trying to belong to a family that never wanted me. Finally, acceptance. This was as close to an apology as James Whitmore would ever give. As close to acknowledgement as I'd ever get. I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope and filed it away. James didn't need my response. He needed to live with what he'd done. And I needed to keep building what I'd started. The invitation arrived in September. Heavy cardstock. Embossed lettering. Formal. The Whitmore Group cordially invites shareholder Harper Martinez to attend the annual shareholder meeting. Waldorf Astoria. October 15th. 10 a.m. I stared at it for a long time. My name. Printed there officially. Shareholder Harper Martinez. Not employee. Not former anything. Shareholder. Maya found me holding it that evening. Are you going? I don't know. Feels petty. Like I'm rubbing it in. Harper, you own part of that company. You have every right to be there. She paused. But you also don't have to go. You've already proven everything you needed to prove. I thought about that. About what I needed versus what I wanted. About closure and vindication and the difference between the two. I'm going, I said finally. October 15th was unseasonably warm. Indian summer, people called it. I wore my best suit, charcoal gray, tailored, purchased with Martinez Global profits. Not saved lunch money. Not sacrificed meals. Money I'd earned building something real. The Waldorf Astoria ballroom was exactly what I expected. Chandeliers. Formal seating. An atmosphere of old money and older power. Shareholders filled the room. Some I recognized from my Whitmore days, most I didn't. I walked in with my head high. Found a seat in the third row. Not front row, that felt too aggressive. But close enough to be seen. Close enough to be impossible to ignore. People noticed. Whispered to their neighbors. Pulled out phones to Google my name, confirm I was who they thought I was. The woman who'd sued Whitmore. The woman who'd won. The woman who'd built a competing company that was eating into their market share. James and Marcus entered from a side door. James saw me immediately. Our eyes met across the room. He paused just a fraction of a second, then continued to the podium. "Good morning," he began, his voice carrying that same authority I remembered. "Thank you all for joining us for Whitmore Group's annual shareholder meeting." The presentation was professional, polished, but the numbers told a different story than the words. Revenue flat. Margins declining. Market share eroding in Asia, the market I'd built for them. The Melbourne contract, once their crown jewel, was underperforming. Client retention was a challenge, which was corporate speak for clients are leaving. James tried to spin it positively. Talked about market headwinds, transitional periods, strategic repositioning. But everyone in that room could read a financial report. Whitmore Group was struggling. Marcus presented the operational overview. He stumbled through slides about supply chain optimization and automation integration. Systems I'd designed, terminology I'd taught him. He sounded like someone reciting a language they didn't actually speak. During the Q&A, an investor asked about the delayed IPO. James's answer was careful. Measured. "We're waiting for optimal market conditions." Translation. No one wanted to invest in a company losing ground to a competitor run by the woman they'd fired. I said nothing during the entire meeting. Didn't ask questions. Didn't make comments. Just sat there, visible, present, undeniable. After the formal session ended, there was a reception. Champagne and small appetizers. Networking and small talk. I was heading toward the exit when Lucas intercepted me. "Harper." His voice was soft. "Can we talk? Just for a minute." He looked different than I remembered. Thinner. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. His suit was expensive but hung slightly loose, like he'd lost weight and hadn't adjusted his wardrobe. "1 minute," I said. We found a corner away from the crowd. He held a glass of champagne he wasn't drinking. "I read about your company," he started. "Martinez Global. The revenue numbers. The expansion. You did it. You actually built something incredible." "I built what I was always capable of building." "I know." He looked down at his glass. "I'm proud of you. I know I don't have the right to say that anymore. I know I lost that right when I sat there silent while my family destroyed you. But I am proud." I'd imagined this conversation so many times. Practiced what I'd say. How I'd make him feel small the way he'd made me feel small. But standing there looking at the man I'd loved for 12 years, I mostly felt tired. "I'm sorry," Lucas continued. "For all of it. For not standing up for you. For choosing them over us. For being too weak to do what was right." His voice cracked slightly. "You were the best thing in my life and I destroyed it because I was afraid of my father." "I know. Not I forgive you. Not it's okay. Just acknowledgement. The simplest truth." "Are you happy?" he asked. "With your company, your life? Are you happy?" I thought about that. About Martinez Global. About the team I'd built. About waking up each morning excited to go to work instead of dreading it. About building something fair and honest that didn't require cruelty to succeed. "Yes," I said. "I am." "Good. You deserve that." He started to say something else, stopped. "I should let you go. But Harper, thank you. For talking to me. For not," he gestured vaguely. "For not making this harder than it needed to be." I watched him walk away, disappearing into the crowd of shareholders and investors. Part of me felt sad for what we'd been. But mostly I felt relieved that I'd moved beyond needing his approval. I left the Waldorf and walked. Not back to my office. Not to my apartment. I'd finally moved out of Maya's place into a one-bedroom in Brooklyn Heights. I walked toward the East River. The same spot where I'd stood at 4 a.m. months ago, broken and trying to remember who I was. The same spot where I'd made promises to myself about surviving, about proving them wrong, about refusing to disappear. I pulled out the velvet box from my purse. I'd been carrying it for almost a year. The anniversary gift. The necklace with our intertwined initials. Custom designed by a jeweler who'd listened to me talk about forever while sketching hearts and loops. I opened it one last time. The necklace caught the afternoon sunlight, glittered like something precious and lost. Once it had meant everything. My marriage. My future. My belief that love and loyalty mattered. Now it was just metal and memory. I dropped it into the water. It made the smallest splash, barely a ripple, and disappeared beneath the surface. Some things you carry. Some things you let go. You were always useless, Harper. Isabella's words had been meant to destroy me. To make me believe I was nothing without them. But they'd become something else. Fuel. Evidence. Proof that the people who need cruelty to feel powerful are the truly useless ones. I'd survived. More than survived. I'd rebuilt. Proved that talent matters more than pedigree. That hard work matters more than birthright. That being underestimated is sometimes the greatest gift because no one sees you coming. I stood there watching the river, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed. Text from Marcus Chin, my operations manager, not the Whitmore Marcus. Client meeting went well. They're signing for 3 years. We're officially expanding into the Pacific Northwest. I smiled. Texted back. Excellent work. Celebrate with the team. Drinks on me. Another text. This one from Maya. Dinner tonight? My place? I'm making real food, not ramen. I'll bring wine, I replied. One more text. Victoria Chin from Meridian Holdings. Board meeting next week. Prepare to discuss Series B funding. Your growth metrics are exceeding projections. Well done, Harper. I walked back toward the office, toward the life I'd built from nothing. Past tourists and street vendors and people rushing to meetings that mattered and meetings that didn't. Past buildings I'd once worked in, restaurants I'd once eaten at with Lucas, streets I'd once walked as someone else entirely. 5 years have passed since that shareholder meeting. Martinez Global Logistics is worth $1.2 billion now. We have offices in 12 cities. Partnerships across 4 continents. A reputation for treating employees like humans instead of resources to be extracted and discarded. Whitmore's IPO happened eventually. Underperformed expectations. Their stock struggled. James retired 18 months later. Marcus stepped down after 3 years of declining performance. Lucas left the family business entirely, went into consulting. I hear he's doing well. I hope he is. I never remarried. Dated occasionally. Nothing serious. Found contentment in the work itself. Building something that proves excellence doesn't require cruelty. That success doesn't demand sacrifice of your humanity. Business schools teach my case now. Corporate governance. Resilience. The difference between building a company and inheriting one. Students write papers analyzing what the Whitmores did wrong, what I did right. But I don't think about legacy much. Don't measure my worth by headlines or case studies or valuations. I measure it by the team I've built. By the clients who trust us. By the employees who say Martinez Global changed their lives because we treat them with dignity. I measure it by waking up each morning excited instead of exhausted. By building something honest. By proving, mostly to myself, that I was never the useless one. The receipt was never about money. Never about revenge. It was about standing up after being knocked down. About refusing to accept someone else's assessment of your worth. About building twice. Once for people who would never appreciate it and once for yourself. And that second time, that's when you build something that lasts. If this story of Harper's incredible comeback had you hooked from start to finish, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when she turned down $25 million and chose dignity over money. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Want more inspiring revenge stories that prove you can rebuild after betrayal? Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.